flying from Manchester to South America, we changed planes in Amsterdam. Then it was a 13-hour flight overnight to Buenos Aires. On the bus on the way from the airport, our guide said that Buenos Aires has 100% inflation. We are broke, she said. And 52% of the population live in poverty. Welcome to Argentina. However, it's just an overnight stop here at the moment before our cruise up to Rio. Tomorrow begins a pre-cruise extension to the Iguazu Falls. The next morning, the weight allowance was just 15 kilograms as we took off on the small plane from Buenos Aires domestic airport. It's a 1 hour 45-minute flight to Iguazu City. Eventually, we could see the spray coming from the mighty Iguazu Falls.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Iguazu City. Goodbye and thank you very much.
This modern airport handles many of the 1.5 million visitors who come every year to see this. Iguazu, big water. We're starting on the Argentinian side, where Sol, our wonderful guide, led the way in applying insect repellent. Then we met our local guide, Sebastian, who would tell us about the national park.
80% of the waterfalls are in the Argentinian territory, the others in Brazil.
He explained that we would walk the upper circuit marked in blue and eventually finish bottom right on the map at the train station.
From there, we're gonna take the train to Garganta del Diablo train station, and there we're gonna do this really nice walk to the edge of Garganta del Diablo.
In English, the Devil's Throat. As Sebastian said, welcome to the jungle.
If you were to design the perfect waterfall, then Iguazu would be it. Straddling the borders between Argentina and Brazil, it comprises a range of cataracts.
In fact, there are some 275 separate cataracts or waterfalls, varying between 200 and 269 feet in height. There's also the local wildlife to admire as we made our way along the walkways. Then we took the ecological train for the 15-minute journey through the jungle to the Devil's Throat station. Sebastian was again on hand to guide us.
We want to walk 1,100 meters, less than a mile, to the end of the bridge. There is the balcony in the edge of the Devil's Throat.
We were very lucky. The walkway had only been opened 3 days ago, having been closed for many months because of flooding. Isn't this great? The toucans in the trees and the crested jays perched on the handrails. And then we reached the Devil's Throat.
Many years ago, when the First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt visited
Iguazu,
she exclaimed, "Poor Niagara."
The Devil's Throat is the largest of the Iguazu Falls, dropping more than 262 feet into a pool which is indistinguishable because of the mist that forms due to the powerful water flow. It's been such a great day, but we were glad to take the train and then our coach across to the Brazilian side of the falls to our hotel for the next 2 nights. With 90% humidity, we were welcomed with an ice-cold fruit juice and then shown to our rooms. I think we're going to like it here. Next day, quite a sight greeted us as we walked towards the poolside restaurant for breakfast. These are South American ringtail coatis, known locally as quati, and a member of the raccoon family. In the trees they use their long tails for balance. They look quite cute, but we'd been told not to feed them, and the staff scared them away. However, there were others looking for scraps at breakfast time. It was just a real pleasure to be part of our group. This morning we were going to view the falls from the Brazilian side. The walkways provide many photo opportunities, and Sebastian was always on hand to answer our questions. There's the Argentinian side, where we were yesterday. The Devil's Throat marks the end of this morning's walk. I think the views from this side are even more spectacular. In 2014, the falls were flooded up to the first level of rocks, and the park had to be closed. For the wild coatis, staying around a group of tourists is more rewarding than looking for food in the forest. But it's dangerous to try and pet them. Sebastian said on one of his tours, a coati held onto a man's finger and wouldn't let go. Eventually, the man had to go to hospital for treatment. From this side, the Devil's Throat is even more awesome, but the walkways are only for the brave. Is that really a man with a jet wash cleaning the walkways? Now it may look cool and fresh, but with the high humidity, it's not. So it's important to keep hydrated. There's a small bird called the Great Dusky Swift, which nests behind the waterfall to protect its eggs. Sebastian's got the Swift logo on the back of his jacket. And there's a swift flying through the waterfall.
It's the largest waterfall in the whole world!
Well, it was difficult not to get excited about it. And there's the elevator which will take us to the bus back to the hotel. We're changing into swimwear, plus ponchos and flip-flops, because Sol, our fabulous guide, is taking us in a boat for a close-up view of the falls. You will get wet, she said. Are you excited? Yes? A little bit scared? No. Once aboard, we set off like a rocket, and the rain was really quite painful on our faces as we headed for the falls. My goodness, what an exhilarating experience, even though we were a bit wet. Back at the hotel, we would need those umbrellas, and sadly it was too wet to visit the Guarani people in the jungle. Next day it was much brighter and the visitors were out in force. Iguazu Falls. There couldn't be a more memorable place to begin our journey in South America. But before we fly back to Buenos Aires, Sebastian is taking us to Puerto Iguazu, where the borders of 3 countries meet. On the left bank is Paraguay, on the right Brazil, and we're standing in Argentina. Tonight, back in Buenos Aires, we've got a real treat. We're going to Michelangelo Tango Show. Next morning we took a bus tour of the city. Built in 1822, the Recoleta Cemetery is the most visited landmark in Buenos Aires, due to its numerous and impressive mausoleums and vaults. Towards the end of the 19th century, when the country was an emerging economic power, the main families of the city competed to build splendid pantheons. Liliana Crociati died during her honeymoon, so her parents built this in her memory. She's accompanied by her inseparable dog. But the main attraction here is that of Evita's tomb, a fairly simple monument for the Duarte family. One of the inscriptions reads, "I will return and I will be millions," which angered the military, who had put pressure on Evita not to stand for vice president. She died at just 33 years old. The Evita Museum chronicles her life. She was one of the people, and she brought the hopes and dreams of the people to the president. And there's the militant Eva Perón holding a microphone. Then we went to a lovely traditional cafe for coffee and croissant. The original cafe opened in 1850 and became La Bila in the 1950s. It's a place where a photographer and writer used to frequent to indulge their passion for racing cars. Created in 2002, the Floralis Generica sculpture opens and closes depending on the sunlight, the wind, and the weather. This is the Plaza de Mayo, a place which has always been the focal point of political life in Buenos Aires. This is the presidential palace, known as the Casa Rosada. And there's the balcony, where Juan and Evita Perón addressed the masses in the late 1940s and 50s. These are symbols of those who disappeared in the 1970s, marked by the bereaved headscarves. From the square we can also see the obelisk, icon of Buenos Aires. Now there's a worrying sign. Malvinas unites us. Argentina wants the Falklands back. This is Buenos Aires Metropolitan Cathedral. And we're about to see the mausoleum of General San Martin, guarded by 2 grenadiers. And back on the coach, we saw the new grenadiers about to change the guard. Caminito Street was our final stop before embarking on our cruise. It's really a street museum. In the second half of the 19th century, numerous Italian immigrants settled there, finding work in the port, building their houses using the remnants of paint from the shipyards to protect and colour the walls.
Caminito que el tiempo ha borrado, que juntos un día nos viste pasar.
And so the bus took us to the port for the next part of our adventure. We were really sad to say goodbye to Sol, our fantastic guide. What a wonderful girl. There's our ship. We've just embarked on Regent Seven Seas Voyager. It's our first time with Regent and we're really looking forward to it. We're here in Buenos Aires at the moment, but we're going to sail north as far as Rio. This was our lovely stateroom with a bottle of champagne to welcome us. And so at 7 p.m. we set sail. We're going to have a good look round the ship. Then it's time to do some unpacking. That's one of the many great things about cruising. Next day, you're in a different city without packing or unpacking. We liked Buenos Aires. No wonder they call it the Paris of the South. Sailing overnight, it's 124 nautical miles to Montevideo, our first port of call. We're in Uruguay, as the locals call it, and Montevideo is the only major city, home to half the population. In the harbour, these half-sunken, rusting and abandoned boats are the result of operators going out of business. As we were docking, we could see this enormous cargo ship being towed sideways out of its berth. Our included tour this morning is highlights of Montevideo. Our first stop is Independence Square. It is dominated by the statue of General Jose Gervasio Artigas, a national hero. Then there's the Palacio Salvo, built by impulsive businessmen in 1928. Its 29 floors now house apartments, offices and shops. The Legislative Palace is a stunning neoclassical building that is considered one of the most beautiful Houses of Parliament in the world. Nearby, ants were at work, carrying one blade of grass each to build a nest. Extraordinary. This beautiful bronze sculpture was created by Jose Belloni in 1919 in Italy. Our guide takes up the story.
Mussolini said, "You will not take the monument to Uruguay." And after many people from the Vatican told Mussolini to let her bring the monument to Uruguay, he could bring it.
In this waterfront park, there's a 1954 memorial to 8 military sailors who died trying to rescue a fishing boat. There are also wonderful views of Montevideo. And these are the local parakeets. Uruguay is regarded as one of the most socially progressive countries in Latin America. It's also ranked first in the Americas for democracy, peace and low corruption. It's now 12 noon and time again for tango.
¿Dónde está el porqué de mis ansias y mi fe? ¿Dónde la razón de mi inmensa desazón? ¿Dónde sigo en tus sueños que me alientan tanto? Si no tus labios que al besar mis labios me dan la fuerza de luchar por ti. ¿Quién le dio mi voz el asilo?
Back to the ship for lunch after that lovely glass of sherry. And 2 other cruise ships have arrived. It's no wonder they've got more than 20 coaches for all those visitors. And later, MSC Musica stopped with her stern right outside our balcony. It's mid-afternoon and time for the sail away. We actually stayed overnight in port, which was perhaps a bit long. However, we did quite like Montevideo and Uruguay. It's 27 degrees here and very humid. Tonight is the captain's welcome party. Normally that means a free drink, but all the drinks on this ship are free.
We have an amazing team on board.
And so the ship's officers introduce themselves.
Our dear guests, good evening. My name is Anna. I'm the Human Resources Manager on the ship. And on behalf of 451 crew members, that's how many we have this cruise, coming from 31 different countries around the world, we wish you a warm welcome and amazing cruise. Thank you.
I always find these occasions a bit forced, but they mean well. It was 300 nautical miles to Rio Grande, our next stop. There's the pilot boat, and once alongside, it's quite a delicate manoeuvre as he climbs the steps to be on a level with our ship in order to climb aboard. It's still quite a way to the dock, past the fishing boats and the usual group of container ships, hence the need for the local pilot who knows the estuary well. There's a nice welcome at the dockside with some people in national costume. Our excursion isn't until this afternoon, so there's plenty of time to read a book. Although the sun isn't out, it's still about 30 degrees, with very high humidity. At 1:30 we set off to explore the sights of Rio Grande. We were a very large group of 40 people, almost too many for our young guide to cope with.
To build this city, slaves, indigenous people and immigrants.
To be honest, we thought the place was a bit of a dump. Perhaps the Oceanographic Museum will be better, where you would think you would see fish. Sorry, no live fish here, only models. Our excursion has been disappointing, to say the least.
It's 32 degrees with 90% humidity, so our 2-hour walk has been a bit of a challenge. Now we're safely back at the ship, and I'm looking forward to a lovely cold beer.
And tomorrow is a day at sea. This is because it's a long way to our next stop, Portobello. 319 nautical miles, or 450 land miles. The day began as usual with breakfast outside at the stern of the ship. It was a relaxing day for reading and sleeping and eating, of course. Nothing to see but sea. Day 6 of the cruise, and we're launching the lifeboats because we've dropped anchor near Portobello. Our tour is called Camborio Highlights and Cable Car, so it's going to be an exciting morning. After a 45-minute bus journey, we joined the queue for the cable car. Soon we could see the high-rise blocks of Camborio, which they call a little Dubai, though we thought it was a bit of a concrete jungle.
Everybody know this place? No.
Very so-so. But
At the top there's a sort of theme park. The MSC Bellissimo has anchored out in the bay, and after a stop at the viewing platform, we're going down to Orange Tree Beach. Angie held the guide's flag. But all too soon, it was time to leave.
Boy, it's warm.
So we left Little Dubai to drive back to Portobello's beach. What a great morning. It's just a pity we didn't have time to walk the nature trail through the forest. That's what I'll be doing this afternoon. At 6 p.m, there's a ship-wide block party, where you come out of your suite to meet the neighbours and have drinks and canapes. Apparently it's become a Regent cruise tradition. Sounds fun. And talking of fun, oh, It's 6 o'clock.
All you need to do, get your wine glasses, go outside now. It's a party, the ship-wide block party. We'll see you soon.
Have you done this before? At 6 p.m, come as you are, they said. This couple were in the shower.
When I overdressed.
Excellent.
Got caught in the shower.
How's the neighbors?
Good evening. We've been wondering where you were. And you listened to me. Well done. Well done. Good evening. I like that it's matching outfits.
I think you should sing a little song while you're here.
You would think so.
Oh, that was such fun. And to finish a fabulous day, we're having a reunion over dinner of the 25 of us who started our adventure together in Iguazu. What a really lovely group of people. The best. Overnight, we're sailing 220 nautical miles to the port of Santos. Then our day's excursion will be to Sao Paulo. As we draw into an overcast Santos, they're expecting a high of 27 degrees today. We're not the first to arrive. As we leave the port area and drive through Santos, I've got a feeling that today's going to be very different from yesterday. It will take an hour to get to Sao Paulo, and we'll be climbing up to a plateau at 2,200 feet. Sao Paulo is Brazil's largest city, with a population of over 12 million, many of whom live on the street, as we shall see later. Unfortunately, most of our sightseeing today has to be done from the bus, because A, Sao Paulo is vast, and B, many areas are just not safe for tourists. This is the Bandeirantes monument, designed in 1920, though not actually completed until 33 years later because of political issues. The cathedral is the largest Catholic church in the city, and in front of it, the Praça da Sé is considered as Sao Paulo's central point, from where all distances are measured. Our guide told us that there was a very big problem in Sao Paulo, with drink and drugs and hundreds living on the streets. We've seen similar scenes in other cities, especially San Francisco, but never quite as bad as in this city. Eventually we arrived at the railway station modelled on Victoria in London, and at last, after 2 3/4 hours on the bus, we would be allowed off. But do not go into the park next door. It's not safe, warned our guide. She repeated it several times. Across the road from the station, we were going to Pinacoteca, the modern art museum. And then it was time for lunch at the Silver Steer Steakhouse. It basically meant that there was as much meat as you could eat, of all varieties: beef, pork, lamb, sausage, chicken. It was absolutely delicious. I could hear my mother saying, "You won't want your dinner tonight," and I didn't. Our final stop was in front of the Museum of History, to see the ornate gardens.
Lógico que eu gostei, eu adorei esse lugar. Esse lugar é muito bonito, é muito da hora.
They're not all locked up, are they? Well, it was a lovely end to an interesting day, but I don't think I'll be booking a week's holiday here next year. After a good sleep on the bus and a nice pot of tea when we got back, we discovered the Costa Favolosa was sailing. Half an hour later, the MSC Seashore sailed as well. On one of the excursions in Santos today, a passenger had her necklace ripped off her neck by a thug who ran off. You have got to be careful in this part of the world. It was 7 p.m. when we finally left port, and tomorrow, after 156 nautical miles, we'll be port at anchor again in Ilha Grande. Ilha Grande is an island. We cancelled today's included 3-hour walking tour because of the heat, so we're going to take the tender ashore and wonder where the mood and the heat takes us. When we arrived, the beach was packed with locals and their families because it's Sunday. And many people were going out on boats to explore other parts of the island. We decided to explore. The church provided a welcome break from the heat. I think it's time to go back to the ship out of the heat. Our room will be lovely and cool. King prawns again, I think, for lunch. Then we might read on the balcony and have a snooze before the 4:30 trivia quiz. Dinner tonight at 6:30 is always a highlight. Ilha Grande is lovely, very relaxing. Tonight we're sailing 155 nautical miles beyond Rio to Buzios.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Buzios. We have been cleared by the authorities and the local time is 8 a.m.
It's really nice being anchored at sea again, to go ashore by tender rather than be in a horrible industrial port. Our included excursion this morning is Beaches of Buzios by trolley. Though really, our vehicle was more like a lorry, and the cobbled roads were a challenge at times. However, we loved bouncing along in the sunshine, looking at the views. 3 very lifelike fishermen statues on the beach are the perfect tribute to Buzios' long history as a fishing community. The beaches here are certainly glorious. It's like being in the Caribbean. After a very pleasant couple of hours, we drove through the town back to where we started. In 1964, the French actress Brigitte Bardot visited the small village with her boyfriend. The bronze statue savours the view as if it was 1964 all over again. Rio's beautiful people followed. and celebrities from Mick Jagger to Madonna have also been known to visit this resort peninsula. Aren't we lucky that we can also see this beautiful part of the world? Just 128 nautical miles to go to journey's end, Rio de Janeiro. At 6 o'clock in the morning, we caught our first glimpse of Christ the Redeemer high above the clouds. And to the left, the tall white building is the Sheraton Hotel, where we'll stay for 3 nights after we disembark. And there's Copacabana Beach with the favelas sprawling up the mountains. Further along is Sugarloaf Mountain, with its cable cars famously featured in the James Bond film Moonraker. The bridge across the bay connects the town of Niterói with the 6.5 million people who live in Rio. It is 9 miles long. And that's the very modern Museum of Tomorrow. Although Brasilia is the capital, Rio remains the most popular and visited city in Brazil. This morning, the included excursion is to Christ the Redeemer. The bus took us to the Cog Railway to take us up Mount Corcovado. Fortunately, the trains do hold a lot of people. We set off on the 20-minute journey through the Tijuca forest. When the trees cleared, there was an audible gasp when everyone saw the view. From the top station, to get to the viewing platform, you take an elevator and then an escalator. The Art Deco statue was created in 1931. It stands 98 feet tall, with an arm stretch of 92 feet. The damage to Christ's head was done by a recent lightning strike. After all, we are 2,300 feet above Rio up here. Fortunately, there's no real cloud today. There's the 9-mile bridge over to Niterói, and we come right round to Guanabara Bay, where this morning we sailed in from right to left behind Sugarloaf Mountain. It's no wonder there's so many people up here, for this is the enduring image of Rio de Janeiro. On the way back to the ship, we drove past the beaches. This is Ipanema. But before that, as I got off the train, I began to feel unwell and fainted in the heat. Fortunately, there was a doctor next to me, and I was soon okay, though we curtailed our afternoon's activities, and I slept. Perhaps he saw Jesus, someone said. This is the famous Copacabana Beach. Across some areas, they run a water line to get you from the sea to the promenade without burning your feet on the sand. Instead of "have a nice day," Rio people say "boa praia," have a good beach. Next morning was the end of our cruise. The Seven Seas Voyager has been splendid, but now we're moving to the Sheraton Hotel for our 3-night A Passion for Rio extension. The hotel looks wonderful, but unfortunately the rooms in this 5-star hotel were a tired-looking 3-star. We were promised a deluxe oceanfront room, and this is what we got: a view of the favela slum on the mountainside. Next day, our first stop was at the beach. This is the famous Copacabana Beach. Barry Manilow, eat your heart out. Then we drove past the Sambadrome, which is a mile-long street lined with permanent grandstands for the Rio Carnival. It was built in 1984 for 65,000 people, but has now been extended to hold 80,000. And here is the Sambadrome filled with people. We're at Samba City, watching just a taste of the carnival. Inside the floats, the driver works from CCTV cameras, so he can follow the yellow line painted down the middle of the road. The top section of this float comes down like an elevator, so they can get it through the warehouse doors. Most of the sculptures have a foam base because it's light, although they do use fiberglass as well. This was great, a fully guided backstage tour.
Everything here is going to be recycled. As I mentioned, we don't reuse the costumes or the floats.
Next, we were going to have a surprise.
Okay, follow me. 2, 3, surprise! Wow.
Yes, we're getting dressed up for carnival. The real participants have to be there 4 hours before and wait in the rain or the sun for their part in the parade, which takes 1 hour 20 minutes to pass down the mile-long Sambadrome street. Then into the room came a samba dancer. Well, that was all great fun. There we are, not a cloud in the sky for our trip up Sugarloaf Mountain.
The granite and quartz monolith guards the entrance to Guanabara Bay, rising some 1,300 feet above the South Atlantic Ocean.
It's a 2-stage ride to the summit, so first we're going up to Urca Hill, which takes about 3 minutes. Each of the cable cars holds 65 passengers. The mountain was named for its tall cone because it resembles sugar that was shaped into a loaf for transportation in the 19th century. In the 1979 Bond movie Moonraker, James Bond battled with Jaws on the tramway. In the scene where Jaws bites through the tramway cable, the cable was made of licorice. And this is what the cable cars used to look like. There's Copacabana Beach, and we can even see Christ the Redeemer. This really is a fabulous part of the world. Unfortunately, it's now our last day, so we're taking it easy. I thought I'd have a look at the local favela from the safety of our hotel room. A favela is described as a slum or shantytown. It comes into being when squatters occupy vacant land and construct shanties of salvaged or stolen materials. There are over 600 favelas in Rio. They say that if your building is not completed, then you don't have to pay tax. The favelas are therefore considered illegal. Here, they've got power, some sort of sanitation, running water, and of course, satellite dishes. I think this is probably one of the better favelas, but I wouldn't want to walk through there at night on my own. It's time for breakfast, outside by the sea. It's really hot out here, even under the umbrellas, and it's impossible to walk barefoot in the sun by the pool. We're coming back later. For now, we're taking the shuttle bus to the local neighborhood of Leblon. The shopping precinct was so modern you could have been anywhere in the world. So we went for a walk down the street, taking a little care. It was actually very interesting. After a while, it was time to get the shuttle bus back.
Welcome to our beautiful beach in the glorious South Atlantic. The waves are amazing, but beware of the undertow.
I think a little paddle is more our thing. Actually, this is what we're going to do. Next day we were leaving for the airport, but not till the afternoon. It's Saturday, so the locals are out in force. All the beaches in Rio are public. There are no private ones. We're left with many enduring images of South America. I think this is one of them.